So I'm here today at Windmill Island Gardens in Holland, Michigan, and today we're going to check it out. I've actually been here a few times before, but I think it'll be new to a lot of my viewers. So what you see here, and the namesake of the island, this is the very last working windmill that was ever removed from the Netherlands. It came from the town of Vinkel, and it was so badly destroyed during World War II that it was basically inoperable by the time the war ended. And the city of Vinkel agreed to sell the windmill to Holland, Michigan for a certain amount of money, but ever since it was restored, the town of Vinkel has repeatedly asked for their windmill back, but unfortunately I don't think it'll be returned anytime soon. The town of Vinkel in the Netherlands actually called and asked for their windmill to be returned sometime in the 2010s. This article is from 2022. Of course, the town of Holland said no, as they built their community around it. They literally built an island for it, and it's part of the town of Holland, Michigan now. And on top of that, the town of Vinkel also has their own windmill today that they built themselves. Therefore, there really isn't a good chance of it being returned. However, there still is some animosity between Holland, Michigan and the town of Vinkel about this windmill ever since. So basically, the windmill was created to mill flour back in the day. And obviously, a person could do it by hand, but when you've got these giant stone mills, basically these giant stones like you'd see in the Flintstones or something that they wheel around, it was pretty hard for a human being to push that. So basically, they would have the big wheel out front spin, and it would ground down all the flour. This area is known as the packaging floor. Obviously, some of these machines are motorized, but back in the day, these definitely wouldn't have been in here. It probably would have looked a little bit more like this back in the day. This is more for sifting. So this is the ground floor of the windmill. And basically, a horse and wagon would come through here, come through one of these doors, and it would stop under this little doorway in the ceiling. And basically, they'd take an order and put it in this shoe, and they would get tugged up to the top. And all the way at the top, where they have the big fan blades and the big gears, they would lower down flour in a sack like this and dump it into the wagon, and then afterwards they would go head on out their way out this door. So this is one of the actual stones they would use to mill the flour. As you can see, it's absolutely gigantic. As this windmill is as big as it is, it could actually spin one of these wheels quite easily, even though it's probably several thousand pounds. But it's just kind of amazing to think that this thing was used to run without modern technology or electricity. But fortunately, as it is very windy today, the windmill is in full operation. It's not currently milling any flour, but it would definitely be able to put out a ton today, I am sure. So if this windmill was actually grounding flour right now, it would turn that turbine over there with the wooden gears, and it would spin around the big millstone, and it would mill the flour, and the wheat would be fed in up here. I know it probably doesn't look like a very safe process by modern standards, but at a time when the only other opportunity was to do this by hand or do something with horses, this really was a miracle machine of its time. Contrary to some of the novelty windmills you may have seen in like a store for decoration, windmills actually are able to rotate their big fan, and they use this wheel to be able to basically crank it around and move it around, and also to be able to make some different setting adjustments. But yes, the actual blade of the windmill is not fixed where it is right now, and it does have to move. Fortunately, they fenced it off, because I imagine getting hit by one of those turbines would probably hurt. So even though Holland, Michigan is on the lake, and it's basically a big bay where Lake Makatawa is, but Windmill Island is actually not in either Lake Michigan or Lake Makatawa, which is right outside of Holland, Michigan. It's actually on a river island. Lake Makatawa begins just over there, but we're actually on a big river right now, which is kind of a curious thing. So in a time before any automated process or any real machinery, this was quite a piece of technology for the time, and very well organized, and I'm sure flour was a lot more expensive back there. Obviously, we take the whole process for granted today, but back in the day, this probably would have been a huge cash cow or moneymaker for whoever owned one. I believe the city of Vinkel owned it, but I mean, it might have had a smaller property owner. So if you want to understand why there's a Dutch theme park in Holland, Michigan, and this isn't the only one, there's also Dutch Village, which is a little further away from here. But basically, the city of Holland was founded in the 1840s by a bunch of Dutch settlers who came here looking for cheap land because they had a disagreement with most of the Dutch population at the time over religious issues. But anyway, they came here and they brought over most of their culture. This is the closest thing to the Dutch village they have here actually on Windmill Island. They have a few different buildings. This shop sells cheese and some local items. So basically, in this building, there's basically a bunch of models of the 1840s of what the Netherlands looked like when the first Dutch settlers arrived here at the same time, about 1847. So this model exhibit is supposed to model what the Netherlands looked like in 1847. And this project actually began all the way back in the 1930s when they started building the first of these buildings. And then in the 1960s, a man worked on one of these buildings every year until he retired many years later. So there's just basically like a whole Dutch village in here, which is pretty cool. So the Netherlands itself is known for producing a lot of agricultural products. In fact, there is no bigger flour exporter in the entire world than the Netherlands. And of course, there is a lot of that industry still going on. But in the Windmill Islands Conservatory that you see here, they grow all the flowers that you will see out in the field, especially in the early spring. There's just a field of flowers that's sitting out there with plenty of tulips. It's actually very nice if you come to see it during that time. I'm not sure what's exactly there by this point in June, but I'm sure there still are some things to see, especially with the greenhouse open at this time of year. When I come here in the spring, there would just be a whole field of flowers right here. Also one over there. Unfortunately, we came out of season for all that. But if you do come during the right time of year, it's really a beautiful sight if you have the chance to see it. So tulips are still widely associated with Holland, Michigan, as obviously they're widely grown in the Netherlands. But every year there's something called Tulip Time in Holland. And it's this big festival that draws thousands of people every year. Generally there are tulips, although some years there aren't actually, which kind of makes it a little ironic. But it's still basically just the little symbol of Holland, Michigan. So in the days before the automobile, waterways could be basically a whole road of its own. And especially in the Netherlands, there's basically entire water roads or locks that run throughout the country that go through like cornfields. And there's even places where you can just basically park your boat right outside of your house. And here we have a lock that would basically control the flow of water so that boats could freely pass through by raising and lowering the water levels as needed. So over here, we have the organ house, and this organ was kindly donated from the city of Amsterdam in the Netherlands because the city of Holland and the surrounding area, which was mostly founded by Dutch people, they sent a lot of care packages to Europe during the war, specifically to the Netherlands, and this was given pretty much as a thank you in 1947, shortly after the Netherlands actually had an ability to produce things again.
This one's got a lot of wear on it. Emil Janin's mark. That's a mark, so.
So thank you for joining me on my trip to Windmill Island and Garden in Holland, Michigan. I hope you enjoyed the video, and hopefully I'll catch you on the next one. So see you next time.